So we'll probably start with 1066. So everyone knows 1066, Battle of Hastings, Harold got an arrow in his eye and all that. What it was William the Conqueror was financed by this specific religious group who wanted to introduce usury into England so that they could asset strip the barons of this country. And that's what led on to the Magna Carta of 1215, which is where the people started fighting back. And they were just like, look, this isn't fair. We respect the fact that you're a king, but if you try and screw us over, there are more of us than you, we will fucking kill you.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Podghost Podcast. Episode 5 today with none other than Sir Toshi himself. Welcome to the show. Tosh, how you been?
Hey, it's always good to be back. Thanks for having me again.
I love it. Tosh, I want to go straight into it, mate. Without wasting no time.
Yeah.
So many messages have been flooding in talking about the historical dates of everything we're trying to get out there. Well, through your knowledge, of course. Take it on from here, mate. You know, tell us about the historical events that have led to where we are today.
All right, yeah, awesome. So we've done sort of like the modern day financial system, and then also I took it right the way back to the very beginning, which is kind of like 3,000 years ago. So obviously there's a little bit in between that, you know, between sort of like, you know, like thousands of years and like the modern day. So we'll probably start with 1066. So everyone knows 1066, Battle of Hastings, Harold got an arrow in his eye and all that. But what it was William the Conqueror was financed by this specific religious group who wanted to introduce usury into England so that they could asset strip the barons of this country. And that's what led on to the Magna Carta of 1215, which is where the people started fighting back. And they were just like, look, this isn't fair. You know, we respect the fact that you're a king, but if you try and screw us over, there are more of us than you, we will fucking kill you. If you try and screw us over. So the 1215 Magna Carta was the first time where the people really rose up because there was a real problem. They were being asset stripped of their lands. So before that, we've got 1066, when William the Conqueror came over.
Yep.
Now, this is something that's probably going to surprise a lot of people.
Go for it.
Now, everybody is aware of Richard I, who is known as Richard the Lionheart. Everybody says his name with great fondness over here because they're proud of what he achieved. But what they don't know is that he was one of them. This is how ingrained the problem is that we're dealing with. So if you go to a castle in the south of England, I'm not going to tell you which one it was because they'll probably take it down. If you want to know what it was, you can privately DM us and I'll tell you what it was. But literally, there is a quote from Richard the Lionheart himself. And the quote is this. It says, "We came from the devil, and to the devil we shall return." He believed that he was the bloodline of Lucifer. They believe that Lucifer, they are Luciferians. They believe that they are the bloodline of Satan. Wow. And this was Richard the Lionheart saying this. This tells you how ingrained it is. It's been going on for thousands of years that they would just come out with it. Didn't even want to hide it. And Richard the Lionheart was from, he was King of England from 1189 to 1199. And notice, if ever you look up Richard the Lionheart, it'll always say Richard the Lionheart, King of England. And then you can trace the title, King of England, to Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was known as Queen of England. However, what about Queen Elizabeth II? They very rarely refer to her as the Queen of England. They refer to her as the monarch. And the monarch is just simply mon being singular and then an ark covering everything. So monarch. They were like, oh yeah, she was the reigning monarch, the singular, the ark, the umbrella that sort of covered everything. But they didn't actually refer to her as the Queen of England. And the reason they didn't do that is because this lot like to change things all the time. Because if you have something in a constant state of flux, people are confused about what is going on and who they are and how they should react. And they do this on purpose. And one of the reasons that they didn't refer to Queen Elizabeth as the Queen of England is because when they installed her as this puppet, she knew what her role was. They all know that they're descendants of Satan. They know why they've been put there. This is why, I can't remember if I said this in one of our other podcasts, when she took her coronation in 1952, she signed her coronation oath at the top. And when you sign something at the top, it means you're not taking responsibility for anything underneath it, because you haven't read it and applied your mind. That's why the signature is always at the bottom. She signed her oath at the top, knowing full well that she was going to commit high treason on the people of this country. And then again, talking about people of this country, well, we've got Richard the Lionheart, who is King of England, and we went from being English men and English women to suddenly being citizens of Great Britain to now residents of the UK. Now, there is a King of England, and there might be, they say, oh, there's King of the Britons. Have you ever heard of anybody say King of the United Kingdom?
No.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist. The United Kingdom is and again, they refer to Charles as the head of state. Now, in the way that a monarch is like a singular arc, an umbrella sort of covering everything, a state is like a state of mind. A state is a condition. Oh, that's I was in a bad way. Look at the state of this. It's a right mess. A state is a current condition. And Charles, they call him, they say he is head of state because he's not a king anymore. And the reason he can't be a king is because his mother didn't sign her coronation oath, so she wasn't the queen. Therefore, the crown can't be passed on. And this is why the Privy Council refer to Charles as a liege lord. They're constantly changing stuff so that people don't know where they're from, and they don't know the history, because if you can control the history, it means you can manipulate the future, and that's why they do it. So I thought I'd bring that on with Richard the Lionheart, just because it's quite interesting. And this goes on to the 1215 Magna Carta. Now, there's a specific line in the Magna Carta 1215 that says, "To no man shall we sell, to no man shall we deny or delay right or justice." That is a constitutional, foundational document as to what everybody has agreed to. Because now we've got lawfare, and the judiciary, they all want your money, and you can't even represent yourself. Because again, what they've done is they've inverted, subverted, and perverted the law. So first of all, we were Englishmen, then we were British citizens, and then we're residents of the United Kingdom. Well, what that is illegal conversion. They've got no right to convert you into something without your consent. And this is this is like a case law that I want to refer to here. So there is Ashby versus White, 1704. And the conclusion of that was, no man can be bound without consent. No man can be bound without consent. And that's in case law. That is part of our constitution, because we are free men and women. So whenever the sort of police, come knocking on your door, and for example, that's a breach of the peace, like you can say to them, "Have I consented to you come around here?" What authority do you have? What authority do you think you've got to come around here and just simply knock on my door? And people don't know this case law, because everything that can protect us has already been established in the past, which is why they're trying to hide it from us and confuse us as to who we are. They'll be like, "Oh, that Magna Carta doesn't apply anymore." Well, it might not apply to the UK jurisdiction, because they made that jurisdiction up. We are in their system. Every time that we are in and using and accept and contract to their system that they've created, they're just like, right, we've got control of this ignorant Mick. He hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He doesn't know who he is. He's referring to himself as a resident of the United Kingdom. Well, that's our jurisdiction. You belong to us now. And let me tell you what else they did. I mentioned this in one of our other podcasts.
Yep.
So we've got the 1215 Magna Carta, and that also says no man shall be seized or dispossessed or imprisoned without due process of law. Nothing can be taken off him. And again, that's because this is the agreement that the people came to with the King of England. I think it was James the First at the time. Yeah, something like that. So this was a negotiation between the people who were just like, look, we understand that we need sort of like a governing body, and we're happy for you to do that.
Yep.
But what we don't want is for you to have complete carte blanche and just impose your tyrannical dictatorship on us. There are more of us than you. And if you try and screw us over, like I said, we're going to fucking kill you. What do you want? Let's have a negotiation here. So even though the people sort of rose up and took the power back, the elites at the top have always wanted to regain it. And they're constantly finding ways to try and do that, which is why they're always changing jurisdictions. So after that, we've got the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666, which converted us all into, in their eyes, corporate entities. We have a straw man, we have a corporate entity that we don't know about, that they are using to contract with us through commerce, which is why they're able to usurp the Royal Mail and say, oh yeah, we're going to now use the Royal Mail for commerce and blah, 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 blah. And that's because everybody is saying, oh yeah, that's right, I'm Mr. Thingamajog, I'm Mr. Thingamabob, and this is my missus and blah, 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 blah. So what you're saying is, I am a maritime entity. As we said before, people are just thinking, oh, well, it's just sort of customary to have a Mr. before my name, not realising that Mr. is an abbreviation for maritime, and when it comes in capital letters, when it comes in capitals, it's referring to a corporate entity, and a corporate entity can't respond, and therefore the only thing that can respond is somebody that's living, and therefore the living individual that's responding must be the trustee, and the trustee is then liable to pay all the debts of the beneficiary. It's absolutely insane what they've done. But this kind of like leads me on to the 1707. So first of all, they created or turned us into corporate entities.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the 1707 Act of Union is what was meant to have united England and Scotland.
Yep.
Now the people didn't consent to that, and because back then they were sort of ignorant and they didn't know how to read or write, so it was this lot imposing their own jurisdiction upon us without our consent. So that's completely unlawful, and it was that created Britain, or I think it might have been the United Kingdom. But when did we stop becoming men and women of the realm of England? But the thing is, because we're using their systems, they're just like, well, if you're using our systems, he who creates owns.
Yeah, we own you, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with the financial. Well, they've created the judiciary and they've created the central banks, and we're using the currency that they print from nothing that they use to enrich themselves. That's why these days, when people go to get their currency out from the bank are now just like, what do you want it for? Is it any of your business? People are just like, that's my money. Well, actually, it's not money, it's currency that we print from nothing, so therefore it's our jurisdiction, and because you've given it to us, we can do whatever we want with it. And if you want it back, you're going to have to beg and plead, and maybe you're going to have to tell us what you want it for, because otherwise we won't give it to you. Because the whole point is that the ultimate control comes through finance, which is why I'm sort of like trying to educate people on Bitcoin. And there are so many people going into the bank saying, oh, I want to withdraw my money. And they're just like, well, you have to order it. And you have to tell us what it's for. It's like, well, hold on a minute. When did this happen? But this is the slow creep that they're bringing in. Because it wasn't like
that back in the day. Back in the day, I'm talking about, what, 10, 15, 20, not even a decade ago. Let's just say a decade ago. You could go in and withdraw what you want. Yeah. Now it's like apparently anything over 500 quid.
Yeah, people had a right to privacy. And we still have a right to privacy. But the thing is, though, they're not treating us as living men and women with any rights whatsoever. Because you cannot open a bank account as a living man or woman. You have to go in and give them your title, which is Mr. or Mrs. or something like that. They literally, even if you tick the word master and you say, I want to be master of my bank account, they won't give it to you. And you'll be like, well, why not? They were just like, well, we don't have to give it to you if we don't want to. And when you're the one that wants to use our services, we're just simply not going to provide our services to you if you tick the word master. Literally, because they don't want you to be a master. They want you to be a maritime entity, so therefore they can control that bank account. And yeah, people have no idea. And like, I remember I've just shown you a video of the zooming in on the...
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Mental
zooming in on the Apple microchip. Literally, all of our digital information is stored on those microchips, and they can just be wiped. All those numbers that people think they see on their phones, on their internet banking, they're like, oh yeah, I'm loaded, I've got all these funds in there. They are literally just digital pieces of crap on a microchip that can just simply be wiped. This is why the world needs Bitcoin, so that digital information cannot be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted. And not only that, they're going to wipe all our laws as well, so people don't know, what their own rights are. This is why everything has to go onto the Bitcoin network, because it was Klaus Schwab who said, pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack. This is why they don't want Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the asset that economically sustains the digital network that doesn't have any central point of authority, control, or failure. That's why, because the operators have to be economically incentivized to sustain the network. Because if there's no reason, if they're not economically compensated, why would they bother?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so therefore, the only other way you can operate a network is if somebody has an incentive to control it, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, and all that. All they're doing is just simply getting everybody to use their services, and they're creating a monopoly. And they're all in bed with the banks as well. And the banks are just like, yeah, you're in bed with us as well. And if you don't do what we say, we're not going to give you a bank account. We'll send the IRS or HMRC to come around knocking on your door. Yeah, but again, as we said before, tax is completely voluntary. There is no law anywhere that says you have to pay tax. And they don't want people to know this either. Literally, tax is completely voluntary. The only time they can ever do you for not paying tax is when you've signed a tax return and you've consented to pay it. And then they'll dispute it. But they can't do anything to you if you've not signed that tax return. It's all about contract with this. Well, it's about contract now with this lot, but it's heading towards dictatorship and tyranny. That's what this is all about. People aren't even aware that when the police knock on your door, there is a case law of the Entick versus Carrington, 1765. And that concluded by saying, no man shall trespass without a license. Nobody is allowed to come onto your property unless you have given them consent. Yeah. And that's case law, 1765.
Who knows that though? 1765. It's like all this stuff. You'd have to be so knowledgeable, or you've got to look into this sort of stuff to even know about half of the laws that you're talking about now.
They've done it on purpose. They're distracting people with titties on the screen and TikToks and music and all this bullshit. But this is actually very simple stuff. Think about it. If you own your property, what right does anybody have to come on it?
Yeah.
So all you need is the case law to back up your claim. What right do you have to come on my property? Have I given you a license? No, right, well, fuck off then. Yeah, and if they're just like, well, we're going to escalate this, well, do it then. I've given you the case law, and I'm telling you, you're now trespassing. You have not got a license to trespass on my property. But again, this is where it's going to come down to a numbers game at the end of the day, because if you've got a whole load of ignorant people who don't know what they're doing, and their head's in a spin because they're just like, this isn't right, this isn't fair, but I don't know what to do about it. You need to stand your ground, and the only way you can stand your ground is with knowledge. And that's why obviously
knowledge is power, without a doubt.
Yeah, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here talking to you, because people need to know this. And my main concern at the moment is the farmers, because food security is absolutely essential for a country to be able to survive. If you can't feed your people, if you can't feed your army, everybody's going to die because they're all going to starve. So this is why they're desperate to get the farmers. This is why they put them on farming subsidies, and now they're after them for inheritance tax, which is bullshit. They're going to be, oh, right, you owe us this. Because farmers don't know anything else. They're just like, look, I'm a simple farmer. I just want to grow my food. You know, that's what I want to grow my food, get paid. And people just don't want to be bothered. What they don't realise is that they're up against this satanic cult, which is shocking, because even I was disheartened. I was just like, oh my God, Richard the Lionheart admitted and thinks that he's, you know, the bloodline of Satan. And then we've got Queen Elizabeth, who, you know, people were fond of, and yet they have no idea that she signed her oath at the top, knowing full well that she was going to commit high treason on the people, because she was going to give away sovereignty of this country to the European Economic Community on the 1st of January 1973. And I'll tell you something else. In the Magna Carta of 1215, there is an Article 61 of that. And Article 61 says that if the king or queen fails to uphold their coronation oath, they can be removed from the throne, and then the barons can take over on behalf of the people. Now, the memorandum, FCO, which stands for Foreign Commonwealth Office, and the number is 30/1048, that was written and drafted in 1971. And that outlined how the monarch would be deposed, high treason committed, and sovereignty surrendered when England or Britain or the UK joined the Economic Community on the 1st of January 1973. And that document was hidden for 30 years. 30 years from 1971. And the moment it was released, in I think it was February 2001, that's when 4 barons invoked Article 61 of the Magna Carta and petitioned the Queen to let her know that she'd failed to uphold her coronation oath and maintain the sovereignty of the people with the crown that has to be passed on in perpetuity in the same condition as it was when it was granted to her. She had failed that. And and when the barons went to petition her, the Queen's guards refused to let them in. So she knew full well what was going on.
Damn.
It's shocking, mate. Like, people probably just wouldn't believe it. But this is kind of why it's just like, right, you need to know what rights you've got. You need to know what's coming, because they're not going to stop, unfortunately. Which is why that you need to know the knowledge, just a few bits of case law. That's all you need. Like Entick versus Carrington, Ashby versus White. Just all you need to know is just a little bits of these things. And the main thing is also Lazarus Estates versus Beasley, where Lord Denning said if fraud is found in anywhere in the process, it null and vitiates the entire thing. And this is why they carried out the Nixon shock on the 15th of August 1971 to remove money from currency and therefore make all the currency securities fraud. So now anything that is being conducted, anything that's being purchased using fiat currency is fraud. But people don't know the difference between money and currency. And if you don't know the difference between money and currency, you're not going to know the case law, which is SEC versus W.J. Harrico, 1946, that identifies fiat currency as securities fraud. So you should be going in, you should be presenting the paperwork and say, look, this is fraud. Or that actually, whoever it is that makes the claim has to prove the claim. So you ask a question, how is fiat currency not fraud? And if they can't answer the question, the case can't go any further. Or they'll throw it out. Or they'll just simply, if they can't answer your question and the case can't continue, you will win by default. Because they can't answer a question. You're just like, right, you've got 14 days to answer my question, or I'm going to take this as acceptance that I'm correct. Because you've not rebutted me. You've not proven
me wrong, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And this is what people need to know. Everything needs to be done via paperwork. So literally, you have an evidence of what the paper leaves a paper trail. But this is why we need the Bitcoin network, because everything needs to be put on the Bitcoin network so it's timestamped and it can't be cracked, altered, changed or deleted. I asked you this question 14 days ago, 30 days ago, 60 days ago, whatever the notice period is that you want to give them, and you did not respond. Therefore, I'm going to take this as acceptance through acquiescence, because you acknowledge that you received the letter. I've given you a reasonable amount of time to answer it, and you didn't. Therefore, this statement stands. You are in the wrong. And then if they're in the wrong and they continue, you can take them to the equity court. You take them to the equity court. This is the evidence. They failed to respond. And you can sue them in their personal and private capacity. And that's what needs to happen. But people just simply don't know this.
Do you know, as an outsider, for someone who don't know much about the power of Bitcoin, because I believe, just like you, Bitcoin is going to be the future. A lot of people are starting to believe it now. But the confusion within the Bitcoin community itself is another challenge in itself. Where do you stand with that?
So again, this is what I'm trying to explain with people. People will unite due to economic incentive. But that economic incentive has to be visible.
Yeah.
People have to see it. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate people so they can see what's coming. So they've got foresight, because being forewarned is forearmed. So if people are actually, they've got the intellectual capacity to take on what I'm saying, they might make a move. And all legal and political influence stem from economic power. This is why there are so many people trolling what I'm saying, because the cabal have literally got their clutches in absolutely everything in our society. Literally all the airports, all the major bus stations, the train stations, the infrastructure. You can't build anything anywhere in this country without paying tax or getting a loan from someone, or without the bank being involved, without getting the local government involved. You have to get planning permission. And they own and control absolutely everything. And actually this brings me on quite nicely to the Rotten Boroughs Act of 1832. Now, what happened then is that there were lots of different boroughs.
Yep.
In this country, and there were some boroughs had very few people living in them. One of the boroughs was just simply a mound somewhere. I think it was in the Midlands, and because that was considered an area that you could vote on, and there was one person living there, that one area, that little mound, had an MP in Parliament, making votes and making decisions. And they were just like, and obviously that was being taken advantage of. So they brought in the Rotten Boroughs Act to stop that, to try and give everybody an equal vote. And this led on to the Local Government Act of 1888. And the Local Government Act 1888 said specifically, all the duties and liabilities of the inhabitant of the county council that becomes incorporated will now become the liabilities of the county council itself. So just recently, in 1995, I think it was Tony Blair moved all the Crown agents, who are the government agents that go between the people and what's meant to be the king. They don't exist anymore. Everything has been flipped into a corporation, meaning they're now acting in their own self-interest and not for the interest of the people. And I lost my train of thought there. So this Local Government Act, when it says the inhabitants, now if you are an inhabitant, you are living. Corporate entities, Mr. and Mrs., they're not living. They're corporations themselves. So what we should be saying to the council is, you recognise me as an inhabitant of this council. Therefore, because you've become incorporated, you are now to pay all of my duties and liabilities through my Sestu KV trust that you have access to. So what we should be doing is sending all of our living costs, absolutely everything, food, water, shelter, holidays, clothes, you name it, everything should be collected and being sent to the 151 officer of the local council. And they should be paying everything, because the local council is now no longer acting in your self-interest, because they've become incorporated. And a corporation, the only obligation a corporation has is to its shareholders, which means they're tyrannical. And this is what happened in this is why they brought the Rotten Boroughs Act in, because the council were becoming so tyrannical. And the reason they're becoming tyrannical is because literally this satanic cult has infiltrated our culture and our judiciary and our customs and our constitution. And it's been doing it for hundreds of years and people don't know about it. And their satanic cult means that they literally want to take over absolutely everything. And the only way we can defend ourselves, or literally keep the wolf from the door before Bitcoin pops and we have our own monetary system outside of their control, is by having the knowledge. And the two main bits of knowledge that we need are knowledge of the Magna Carta, which is in 1215, and the other one was in 1688, which is the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights was kind of like the Magna Carta in more modern detail. But one of the main things in the Bill of Rights, they specifically said there are to be no fines or forfeitures without conviction from a jury of peers, without having gone through due process. And as I said before in one of the other podcasts, that was held up in the Metric Martyrs case in 2002, where the shopkeepers refused to list their items in the metric system, and the council tries to impose a fine on them. And the Supreme Court said, absolutely no way. There is a line in the Bill of Rights, which is a foundation to our Constitution, where there is to be no fines or forfeitures without conviction from a jury of peers. And like I said before, anybody who tries to impose a fine or forfeiture on you without going through due process, well, that's contempt of court, which should be 5 years in prison. And that's not happening right now. So what we need to do is we need to keep the wolf from the door. And another thing that people might find quite interesting is the Slavery Act. Now, the Slavery Act defines a slave as someone who doesn't have a choice. So if a copper comes up to you and says, oh, you've got to do this, or you need to pay that, you should be saying to them, well, do I have a choice? Do I have a choice to pay that or not? And if they say no, we're just like, right, well, this is the Slavery Act here. Like, if you are trying to treat me as a slave, then I have every right to defend my own liberty from this tyranny in any way that I see fit. Because you're trying to enslave me. This is tyranny. So it's like tax. Do I have a choice to pay it? If they say no, you're like, right. Well, now you're trying to treat me as a slave.
No, but I think the way we've been brought up and the way this country, I'm probably speaking for anyone who's in my sort of generation or a bit younger, maybe even a bit older. Whenever you get a letter or a policeman stops you or you get some sort of enforcement, you generally don't feel like you've got a choice. You don't genuinely feel like you can say no. Even something small as a parking fine, like I've said to you on a previous podcast as well. You feel like when you get a fine or a speeding fine or anything like that, you just feel like you've got no choice. I think the way we are, the way we've been programmed, like you've always said, and I do believe we fell for the system. There is a system and we are all in the system where we believe you can't do that, you get a CCJ, you can't do that, you won't get a property, or you can't get a loan. So everything needs to be on the system. It needs to be clear. They need to be in charge of everything. So I think everything you're saying makes so much sense.
Yeah, people simply just need to know what their rights are. And you need to have all these little things in your repertoire ready so that if a copper does come and confront you, which is what they will do, have you got a license to enter my property? Yeah. So now you're trespassing. I need to see your bond. I need to see your insurance details, because people can make a claim against the police. And if they're not insured, if they don't have a bond, they've got no right to be acting as a police officer, because they need insurance against the public. Things right. I need to see your bond in case I'm injured by your actions here. Are you insured? You've got every right to ask for that, because you can sue them in their personal and private capacity if they are acting outside of their public duty, which is malfeasance in public office. I think you need to write a book for everyone where all the acts are in there. And if I know they get pulled over, hold on a minute, let me read it. And I can tell them, because I feel like if you don't know, like, the way you're making it sound is very easy and very simple, and it is simple. If you really think about it, like you said, we're so caught up with social media, TV, football, whatever you want to call it, the music. No one's really got time to look into the things that really matter. And maybe it's a food for thought for people that are watching. That maybe we should invest our time in with the rights that we have and the rights we should have, and exercise them whenever we need to. But unfortunately, I'll be real with you, I don't really have that in my closet at the minute. So I need to be the first person to eat your brain off camera and start writing these things down. Yeah, absolutely. Once you know them, literally, just like you said there, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Why don't I just know this? Because he who makes the claim has to prove the claim, and you prove the claim with case law. And there are just blatantly obvious ones. That's all you need to know. Yeah, so it's just like, I need to know, like, do you have the right to approach me? Are you insured? You're trespassing. I need to give you notice that you're trespassing. Yeah, and if I ask you to leave and you don't leave, well, that's breaching the peace. So therefore I can do you for malfeasance in public office. Therefore I need your insurance details. Who are you? I'm going to sue you in your personal and private capacity. Yeah, but because people don't know this and they just sort of like shit themselves whenever they get a copper at the door. Yeah, but this is why the secret to tyranny is ignorance. Yeah, the secret to power is knowledge. And this is why they want to make us dumb and stupid and just simply looking at TikTok videos all day instead of actually reading up on our constitution and understanding our own rights. And going on from that, I just need to mention quickly about trusts. Yep. Because if anything that you have in your name, they will take off you. Because they will use that as leverage against you. Oh, you've got a property in your name. Oh, you've got a house in your name. Right, well, we believe that you owe us this, and therefore we're going to take it. And it's just a numbers game. You're not going to, if they turn up. I know people that have sort of stopped paying their mortgage because they were just like, hold on a minute. Where did you get these funds from this mortgage? And you told me that not to sign it when I actually signed my signature on it.
Yep.
You said you told me to leave the date blank. Well, that's fraud. So you're putting a later date on it. That date is going on there when I didn't actually sign it. So what's going on? Well, that mortgage agreement is actually a promissory note. And what you do is you sign that promissory note. They then take that from your Sestu KV trust. So you've paid for it yourself. And they then give you cash and then demand interest on it. So you're just like, well, hold on a minute. So I've paid for this myself, and yet I'm paying you interest on my own funds that have come from my own trust. When people started realizing that, because they can't allow that information to get out, I know someone that literally wrote to them, spelt it all out. I know this is a promissory note from my own Sestu KV trust. This is fraud. I need you to prove where the funds came from. Where did you get that funds from? Yep. Guess what? Armed police turned up at his house. Armed police turned up at his house to take his house off him. That's how concerned they were about it. So what people need is they need to make sure everything that they use is not in their name. And this is where private trusts come in. And this is where sort of people are probably best off contacting us privately, because it's all very well saying, oh, I've got my things in a trust, but you need to know how to manage that trust. Because if Big Brother says, oh, well, you need to prove that you have a trust, and then you expose your private trust, well, that's now no longer private, because you've just flashed it in front of their face. And therefore, if you're a trustee and you've signed a non-disclosure agreement, well, you've just broken your agreement there. You can be sued for it. So you need to know how to manage your trust. And there are very few people I know in this country that actually can do proper trust, but I do know individuals who can do them. It's brilliant. So what you need to do to prove that your private trust exists is to show them a hybrid trust. You can show them a hybrid trust, a hybrid trust, and that trust will prove that your private trust exists, but you don't have to show them your private trust. So it remains private.
Show them you have one, but you don't want to tell them anymore.
Absolutely. But people don't even know this. They're just like, oh, I've got it in a trust. I'll prove the trust exists. Oh, well done. Right, so they're all the trustees and they're the beneficiaries. Right, nice one. Thanks very much. They'll get you because they want to know. So this is where you have to learn to manage it. So all the farmers need to put everything that they own in a trust, but the trust needs to be managed properly. For example, like an unincorporated corporation. A trust is no different from a corporation that has managers, and CEOs and things like that. A trust is the same. It's literally a private contract between the trustees who manage the assets in that trust for and on behalf of the beneficiary. That's got nothing to do with Big Brother because it's completely private. So long as you're causing no harm, injury or loss, and you're acting in honour, it's nothing to do with Big Brother. And private associations as well, massively important. Any business or any commerce, whatever, that is conducted within a private association is private. There is no tax due on that. And so what you do is you can create a private association. And again, You don't even call it a private members association.
Jeez.
If you call it a private members association, you're disclosing that it has members. So they're like, okay, well, who are those members?
Who are they? Yeah.
Yeah. So you just say it's actually a private association. And again, this is where Bitcoin comes in, because in Bitcoin, everything is done in private and they have no jurisdiction over it whatsoever. And they can't see who's made that Bitcoin transaction. The only people who know who've made that Bitcoin transactions are the two people who are involved in it, because you know who you're sending it to and you know who's receiving it. It's got nothing to do with Big Brother whatsoever. And this is why they don't want Bitcoin. So in the future, actually, when you create a limited company, rather than registering that company on Companies House that then knows everything about you and who the CEOs and the directors are and the shareholders are, if your memorandum and articles of association are recorded on the Bitcoin network, your company is legit. You've got limited liability, but they don't know about it. And when it's written down, you can prove that it exists. And this is why they want rid of Bitcoin, because everything can be done on the Bitcoin network. It can be recorded and written down so that if there are any disputes that arise, they can be solved and proved. Yeah, there are no controversies. When everything is written down in English, in black and white, there are no controversies. And again, it's the same with the police knocking at your door. You need to record that event. So what we need is when you're going to court or when the police knock on your door, get a camera that is broadcasting live onto the Bitcoin network where they can't deny what they've done. Did you give them notice? Are you trespassing? Do you have a license to knock on my door?
Get it, yep.
Breaching the peace. Who's making the claim? Is there, as I've said before, am I doing this voluntarily? If it's not voluntarily, I don't have to do it. Is there a victim? Because if there's no victim, there's no crime. And if there's no contract, there's no obligation. So when you're knocking on my door, I need to know who the claimant is. Oh, there isn't a claimant. We can't tell you who it is. Well, if there's no claimant, there's no claim. Do one. It's these little things that people need to know to keep the wolf from the door in the meantime. But really, everybody needs to be interacting on the Bitcoin network and using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, because it's the only digital commodity that has any true economic value. So I'll probably leave it there.
So there you have it, guys. You know what? If you're not already on the Bitcoin ladder, start looking into it, investing in it. As Tosh just said, now that is the future and we need to be looking into that. So it was another fantastic chat with Toshi. Until next time, if you liked what you saw, make sure you like, comment, share and subscribe. And we'll be back real soon with another dose of this sort of knowledge. Peace, love and respect. We're out. Thank you.